Hey guys, it's GirlGotGame, and these are my final thoughts on Bad End Theater by Nom Nom Nami. There will also inevitably be story spoilers discussed, so I'd encourage you to either play the game yourself first or watch either myself or someone else play through it before watching this. And with that being said, let's jump in. Bad End Theater is a puzzle adventure game that takes place in, you guessed it, a theater. As the player, you control 4 different dolls: the hero, the maiden, the underling, and the overlord, by making simple choices throughout their stories to lead them to their bad endings. Seems simple enough, and for the most part, it is. But you can't get all of a character's endings from just playing that character to completion and then switching to the next one, so on and so forth, until you've unlocked them all. Each character has a set of 4 traits that you unlock by playing through their stories. These traits will automatically control that character's actions when playing as one of the other characters. This is where the real puzzle aspect of the game is, since you'll need to play around with turning traits on and off for the characters you're not controlling to get further and further in the story of the character you are controlling, which will unlock further traits as well as, of course, more bad endings. Luckily, the puzzle of playing around with these traits isn't too difficult, and if you're ever stuck, there's a very handy-dandy flowchart that you can refer to for each character, which will go so far as to direct you on which traits need to be active or not active on which character, as well as which characters influence that branch. If a character icon is grayed out on the tree, that means you haven't unlocked their specific trait yet, which is also helpful info. I definitely appreciated this feature because, even though, as I said, puzzling out different combinations of choices and traits is not too difficult to unlock the different endings, for recording purposes, it really helped streamline the process for me and helped me unlock those endings faster. Now, moving on to the writing. Even with each run-through to an ending being pretty short, the writing did such a good job of endearing each and every one of these characters to me. I drew close to them all very quick. Did they have flaws? Absolutely. Not all of those traits were good traits after all, but that also was kind of each of the characters' charms. They all had negative and positive traits, and this made them feel real and endeared me to them. I was rooting for all of them, and it was always sad when any of them died off during the endings. It was fascinating getting to see different sides of them depending on the combination of choices made along with the traits of the other characters. Something else I really loved about the writing was the fact we saw the same events and endings from different characters' points of view, and it was always neat to see how that character ended up in that position, and also what the thought processes and feelings were of different characters who were reacting to what was going on around them. But of course, the shining star of the writing is the story behind the stories. It was so cool when I had my first interaction with tragedy and realized there was a bigger, overarching, tragic love story at play here. If I wasn't motivated to unlock every ending before then, I definitely was after that revelation. Those small interludes with tragedy, as well as collecting her letters and getting the backstory of why this theater exists in the first place, really got my theory wheels a-turnin'. But even with all that, I was unprepared for the twist at the end. It's not often I get surprised like that, and I was absolutely thrilled that it was a happy twist as well, where not only the characters got a happy end, but tragedy and her lover did too after all this time. The fact that the Maiden and the Overlord were based on them, and how there are subtle clues to hint at this, was amazing, and I loved it very much indeed. As for the art, it was so gorgeous. The pixel art was so simple, but also so bright and vibrant. I loved that each of the characters had an assigned color, and it all stood out very well against the black and white background of the theater. I also loved how all the colors clashed when it came to the scenes depicted in each character's quote-unquote true ends. The design of all the characters and scenes was super cute as well. I think the art style also helped to soften the blow of some of the bad endings in a way, because some of those were quite brutal with the amount of killing and ripping apart of bodies there were every so often. So I'm appreciative of the art for helping those scenes not be as scarring as they otherwise may have been with a different art style. The final boss battle with Tragedy was also animated beautifully, and I'd say it was my favorite part of the art, hands down. The music and sound design in this game was also excellent. The music was simple and very catchy. I'm still humming parts of it a week after finishing the game, and I probably will for a long while after. I loved that each character had a unique theme, and of course the ending song where we get lyrics for the song you hear when you start the game up was, no question, my favorite piece of music. The lyrics for it are so heart-wrenching, and the fact that the first half is sung from Tragedy's perspective, and the second half from her lover's is just, I'm getting all emotional thinking about it again. It's beautiful. It really is. Now, normally around here in my final thoughts, I do a ranking of the different ends and so forth, but because there's so much overlap with endings between characters, and the fact the endings are so fast, I've decided what I'm going to do instead is just talk briefly about each character and what the most interesting ending was for me when playing from their perspective. Because if I had to pick a number one ending for this game, it's going to be the true ending, hands down. No ifs, ands, or buts. I mean, it's a happy ending for all the characters, plus you reunite a beautiful couple that were torn apart from each other and are finally back together after who knows how long? How can anything compete with that? I also am not going to pick a favorite amongst the characters because I love them all for different reasons, and okay, yes, it's the Underling if you must know. I don't even really know why I like the Underling the most, but their chaotic energy was super cute. I'm sure there's other reasons, but I'll get to that later when I talk more about them in a bit. First off though, I want to start with the hero since he's first on the stage, as well as the first character I played as. I have to say, for someone who got into the hero business because he liked making the cool looking outfit, he's got some serious skills. I mean, he was able to carve through hordes of demons like they're nothing. He's also certainly very devoted to his role. Maybe too devoted. The hero will rarely question anything by his own volition. He has a narrow-minded view of how the world works and his place in it, and doesn't really deviate from it unless another character is able to convince him to consider another path. As such, he often comes across as kinda clueless and unaware of how things could have possibly played out as badly as they have in some of these endings. That being said though, he doesn't abandon anyone who's in need, and will throw himself into danger at a moment's notice, which shows he has a big heart and is really quite brave. My favorite ending of his was the loyal hero. Things go really wrong in this ending since the hero is on his one-track mind of all demons are evil and must be destroyed. When he goes to kill the Overlord at the castle, the Maiden steps in and gets killed instead, which shocks the hero. As he's recovering from that blow, he then is barely able to kill the Overlord as well. The reason I really like this end is because it's one of the few times the hero is really shocked and takes some time to register all that's happened. The sword feels heavy in his hand with the blood guilt that comes crashing in on him. But what really blew my mind is how he intends to cover all that up from the village by claiming the Maiden was dead before he got to her, but that he avenged her death, and how there will be a celebration when he returns. It was one of the darkest moments for the hero, but also one of the more interesting for his character. Next, let's talk about the Maiden. Yes, don't worry, I'm going in order of characters on the stage, and won't have you guys wait for her to have her turn yet again. Jokes aside though, I adore the Maiden. She's arguably the most fleshed out of the characters, and I felt we got the most from her as far as her thought processes and emotions, which makes a lot of sense considering she's based on the play's author, Tragedy. I thought it was cute in a way that she was impatient about fulfilling her role and decided to take destiny into her own hands. She's very earnest and kind-hearted. The way she and the Overlord fell for each other so quickly was also adorable. The Maiden's biggest weakness is probably that she's too impetuous, and that's what really served as the impetus for what led to all the bad endings for these characters. That impetuousness isn't all bad though, as it does move her to act quickly to try and save those that she cares about. Did it lead her to some bad deaths and dark situations? Yes, it did. But I definitely admired her ability to take quick action and how brave she was about putting herself in danger on multiple occasions. She definitely faced her bad ends with the most grace out of all the characters too, I'd say. My favorite of the Maiden's bad endings is the selfless Maiden ending. She gets fed up with the closed-mindedness of the village and decides to go back to be with the Overlord, but upon arriving finds the castle up in flames. This girl runs in there with no hesitation to try to save her, but unfortunately is too late to save either the Overlord or herself in the end as they both die in the fire. The last couple shots of that ending with the Maiden laughing with tears coming down her face as the fire consumes her is haunting. Couple that with the last thought she has of how she deserves to die for acting outside her role, and that these demon fires will cleanse her rotten soul gave me goosebumps. And now let's talk about the Underling. As I mentioned before, the Underling is just very chaotic. They really want to do as little work as possible, and on the surface, it looks like the Underling has a lot of friends that they work with. I also really like the Underling's design the most out of everyone, I think. They just look super cute, and they're also pretty short compared to everyone else, so maybe I'm drawn to them subconsciously on the fact that we share that in common or something. I really felt bad for the Underling in most endings because they usually really get the raw end of the deal, and they get betrayed and bullied by these friends of theirs on multiple occasions. The Underling is very much an underdog in the story, and I couldn't help but be happy for them whenever they were able to get away with a happy-ish end. I also really loved how they seemed so into their new job of being a runway model for the hero after the true end. That was so stinking cute. My favorite ending as the Underling was the heroic Underling ending. In most endings where the Underling tries to take out the Overlord, they're just straight up being disloyal and there are no redeeming qualities to be had there. But I really like this end because the hero failed to save the Maiden, and she's doomed to a very bad ending with a possessive Overlord. I couldn't help but find it funny that the Underling unintentionally saved her from that fate and was just taking advantage of the situation to stab the Overlord in the back. The way they look so pleased with themselves for doing something kind of heroic by complete accident, plus the fact they're just thinking about how the castle is now their castle and they're the new Overlord, just makes me laugh. And I think they earned the title in this ending with that unintentional good deed compared to some of the other similar Overlord endings for the Underling. And finally, the Overlord herself. I really like the Overlord's style. Her design, the hot pink color associated with her is really cool. It definitely seems like the Overlord's led an isolating life for the most part, and she also feels rather aimless, often resting and feeling tired, looking sad and withdrawn. From a very brief look into her backstory during the true end, it sounds like she overthrew her father at some point because she didn't agree with his policies regarding humans, and would like relations to be better between demons and humans, but is unsure how to make that happen. The Overlord, while not powerful enough to stop herself from being overthrown or killed on multiple occasions, can definitely be fierce and ruthless when she wants to be though, as seen in many of the endings where she defeats the hero, or exacts her revenge on the Underling. Of course, the best moments with the Overlord is most of her interactions with the Maiden. Seeing her genuine surprise at how quickly the Maiden warms up to her was super heartwarming. At least when it didn't lead to the Overlord taking on the possessive trait and going yandere mode on her. I definitely wasn't expecting any yandere endings during this game, so that took me by an unexpected surprise. My favorite ending for the Overlord would probably have to be the vengeful Overlord one. Her reaction to the Maiden sacrificing herself to save her is heartbreaking. The rage on her face when she kills the hero in revenge was also heartbreaking. The final shot, though, at the Overlord in this ending is so unsettling because she looks the most demonic here, probably out of all the endings, as she's let her feelings of hate and revenge completely take her over, as she goes out to kill all the humans and rule the world. It was an ending that escalated very quickly, and it stuck with me the longest out of the other endings for the Overlord. And there you have it! I hope you all enjoyed my final thoughts on this short but very sweet game. I really enjoyed it, and I hope you enjoyed watching me play through it and enjoyed listening to my final thoughts on it as well. If you haven't played this game for yourself yet, I encourage you to do so. It's a lot of fun, and pretty short, but a very much worthwhile and charming experience. Now, with that being all said, it's time to announce the next Sunday game. Thank you to everyone who voted in the community poll. It was pretty touch and go there for a while, but... No, I'm kidding. Our Life Beginning and Always won by a landslide. But for very good reason, because I've had many, many, many requests to play it over the years, so I'm really looking forward to playing through it. I hope you guys will be able to join me for that. Regardless, thank you for listening to my final thoughts. I'd also love to hear your thoughts on this game as well if you'd like to comment down below. Thanks again for joining me, everyone. Until next time, I will see you later.